You've been watching President Trump speak in Milford, Michigan. Former White House Chief of Staff and former North Carolina Congressman Mark Meadows joins me. Nice to see you, sir. And the president, obviously, at least obvious, I think, to me, is he's in Michigan not just to cheer on the auto workers, but because there's a very close Senate race there in that state with Mike Rogers and the two Democrats who face a primary in August. Tell me your thoughts about this.
Yeah, so obviously we got to hear from President Trump doing what he does best, which is bringing the message to the American people. And in this particular case, bringing the message to those workers there in Michigan. And, you know, for those of us that live in states that perhaps the auto industry is not the controlling factor, you know, here he was at a plant that was over thousands of acres, hundreds of buildings, and he's taken a message to what typically has been a Democratic stronghold, but because of his America First agenda, he has not only got a platform, but he's got a cheering audience. And so your point about the Senate race, he would not be there if this was not a close Senate race. So the candidate, the Republican nominee, Mike Rogers, I served with him in the House. He is actually not only a great candidate, but he has the potential for winning to go up against one of the two Democrats. And all betting is really on Al Said, who that's what the president kept referring to in terms of socialism, communism. And so that message will not be the first time you heard it on your broadcast here, but you'll hear it repeated between now and November.
Well, he only won by about 80,000 votes against former Vice President Kamala Harris. He's now underwater in Michigan, which makes it tough. Is he on the ballot? I mean, I realize he's not really written on the ballot in November, but is he on the ballot? Is he the one who can lift Mark Rogers over the line or not?
Yeah,
or Mike Rogers, rather. Mike Rogers.
I think he. Right. I think he's the only one that can get Mike Rogers across the finish line. And even though you look at the polling numbers, some of those polling numbers, even leading into last November's election, had him down. But he is the only Republican to win the state twice, other than Ronald Reagan in the last quarter of a century. Ronald Reagan was the last president to do that. And I will say he actually got more votes in Michigan than Barack Obama got during his heyday. So we can look at it in terms of numbers, but yes, this president getting Mike Rogers and perhaps Governor James Johns across the finish line is a critical component. So I don't think it's the last you'll see of President Trump in Michigan.
Well, if Mike Rogers doesn't win, it could be the seat that ends up throwing the Senate to his opposition party, to the Democrats. So obviously an extremely important race to both parties. Mark Meadows, thank you, sir.
Great to be with you, Greta.
And a Secret Service agent has been arrested in Florida. It involves the hazing of a college student at a fraternity. The New York Times is reporting that the victim is a law student at the University of Miami. Court records show the Secret Service agent was allegedly involved in the beating of the victim. It occurred during a hazing ritual at the fraternity Kappa Alpha Psi. The agent was known in the fraternity as the Dean of Pledges. Court records say the hazing was so bad that the victim suffered kidney damage and nearly died. The agent charged is Marquez Pinder. He is 29 years old. He was booked on felony charges of hazing, attempted manslaughter, and aggravated battery with a deadly weapon. A lawyer for Pinder released a statement saying in part, quote, "He has served his country honorably, first in the military and then in the Secret Service. We look forward to fighting these charges," end quote. The Secret Service office in Miami says in part, quote, "We are fully cooperating with the investigation. The employee is on administrative leave and has been since the moment we were notified," end quote. Former Secret Service Special Agent Tim Miller joins me. Nice to see you, sir. It's hard for me to figure out when this happened, whether it was when he was in college or recently. I'm still trying to figure that one out. But, you know, it is so rigorous what these agents have to go through in order to become agents. They do they go back and check their history. So how does this happen that this slipped through?
Yeah, that's a great question, Greta. And let's start by saying, boy, in this season, with the threats to President Trump up 40%, You cannot have folks that occupy the positions of Secret Service agents involved in incredible misjudgments like that. And I'm not going to rush to judgment. There are facts that are coming out, but it does bring up an interesting point. The Secret Service has had a series of missteps recently. An agent on the VP detail is likely facing criminal charges for releasing information that is very, very detrimental to the protectee and other agents. And so to your point, Greta, when I got hired, they went back to my kindergarten class and asked, hey, how was he? So something is happening that's changing the dynamics of who they're hiring, and we better figure that out fast.
I've even got called by people who have applied to the Secret Service who I've met in life and called them on, asked about them. So, I mean, they usually do a pretty rigorous background. But anyway, but there have been other recent charges. A man was a Secret Service for possessing child sexual abuse. That was in March of this year. You've got some other arrests. But on the other hand, these arrests get so much spotlight because it's so unusual. There are thousands of members of the Secret Service. And so I don't know. I think we have to put it in correct perspective, too, whether this is just, the numbers.
No, I think you're 100% right, Greta. And just remember, they're people. In whatever people group you have, whether it be politicians or lawyers, you're going to have that select few that are going to cross the line and do things that are embarrassing to the organization. This is another one. But I do think it's time for us to ask, in light of a series of missteps, hey, are we hiring the brightest, best combat warriors we can? Let's be clear, Greta, the Secret Service is fighting a shooting war right now. The old days are past. We need to have trained, seasoned warriors. They're never going to be perfect. And fortunately, the Secret Service has an aggressive internal investigative capability that they use. But these are alarming things, especially when you have someone, sharing classified information regarding protectees' travels. And this is something I don't envy Director Kern at all. He's got some things he has to do amidst a shooting war.
Well, not to mention, too, not just even sort of the misconduct, but sort of the failures, like Butler, Pennsylvania, I think probably could be seen as a failure, in terms of how that shooting occurred. But I also hear, I don't know if this is true or not, that there are recruitment issues. They're desperately trying to fill the ranks. When you try to fill the ranks, you sort of let the qualifications slide a little bit.
Well, that's a great point, Greta. And also remember, because I recently spoke on another network about that, they're filling the hiring numbers that they need. The problem is you cannot replace the experience of the agents that are walking away. They're stretched incredibly thin. Their families are stressed. And, if you hire an agent today, it's going to take him 2 to 3 years to get really proficient in the level of protection that Secret Service does every day. And so there's a twofold problem. Number one is keeping the really qualified guys and gals from leaving. And then number two, like you said, bringing in the right people. And they have to have both immediately. We don't have time to waste. Unfortunately, as we want the president to be able to do what he just did, which is to make his case to the American people. And that only happens if he's safe.
And I just want to emphasize again, the great courage of so many. I even witnessed one at the White House Correspondents' Dinner in April, standing in front of the president when we didn't know where the shots were coming from. So, I salute all those, in spite of the few that may have serious problems. And of course, this guy has just charged at this point. Tim Miller, thank you.
Thanks for having me, Greta. I appreciate it.
And Mother Nature's being wicked in my hometown of Appleton, Wisconsin. Today, a tornado ripped through Appleton and nearby towns, including Menasha. Major damage is being reported. Multiple homes have been destroyed, debris scattered everywhere. It's not yet known whether there are injuries, but the destruction looks awful. Coming up, the gloves are off, and the Wednesday showdown has even begun already. Senator Rand Paul and Dr. Anthony Fauci will take each other on in a Senate hearing. Senator Paul released Fauci's personal diary entries from the pandemic. That when the record continues.
Hey, I'm Carl Higby from Newsmax. Look, I'm unapologetically pro-American, and honestly, this is the one place that lets me call it how it is. I'm not holding back. I'll give it to you straight every single night.
We interrupt your summer with huge news. Lumber Liquidators Flooring Flash Sale is happening now. 1 week of our lowest prices yet, with huge savings on hundreds of floors. Waterproof luxury vinyl plank, get up to 60% off. White oak engineered hardwood, up to 40% off. Plus, more deals on more floors in every store. Your next floor is priced right and ready to go, but only through July 28th. Don't miss out. Shop nationwide or online at lumberliquidators.com.
Where's the admission desk at your hospital? You may need it sooner than you think. It's the middle of the night and you, your spouse, or your child is sick, high fever, can't keep anything down, and getting worse. Now you're waiting in the ER, and everyone gets seen before you. And when I finally see you and order prescriptions, you still have to wait for your pharmacy to open and hope they have what I prescribed. This is the medical emergency kit. It's stocked with essential medications, including amoxicillin, generic Z-Pak, and ivermectin. Now you have the right medications when you need them. And it's why I and so many of my colleagues have medical emergency kits. It's like having an urgent care and pharmacy in your home. Just fill out a brief online medical intake and your kit, prescribed by a licensed provider, is shipped to your door. Here's how to order.
Order your kit now and save $45. Visit urgentcarekit.com/news. That's urgentcarekit.com/news.
My dad has never been in better shape. He had a stroke and passed away. He had a life insurance policy. Ethos.com. In 10 minutes, you can be covered with life insurance.
Check your price today at ethos.com.
Every day, bumps and bangs happen. Bruises are optional. Use daily dermatologist recommended Dermend and reduce the appearance of bruises. Get Dermend Moisturizing Bruise Cream in the first aid aisle.
What if I told you you can get a brand new metal roof from Erie Home for 50% off the installation? Now you can. Our metal roofs are proven to withstand 120 miles per hour wind and 2-inch hail, all backed by a 50-year warranty. Call now for your free estimate.
When I got diagnosed with skin cancer, it was right under my eye. I was told that surgery was the only option, and I did not want to get cut open on my face. I asked my women's group to pray for me, and one of the other ladies told me about the procedure that her friend had, and it was Gentle Cure.
If you, like millions of others, are affected by skin cancer, it's important to know that surgery isn't the only option. There's another choice, Gentle Cure. Gentle Cure uses low-energy X-rays to kill cancer cells with a 99% cure rate. Plus, there's no cutting, no surgical scarring, and no downtime.
I had no pain, I have no scars, and I'm cured. Amazing.
To learn more, call today or go to gentlecure.com.
I wonder if you would recommend locking down schools if you had to do it all over again.
Well, you know, again, it's first of all, I didn't recommend locking anything down.
That interview from 2022 is not aging well. Why? Well, because Senator Rand Paul just released Dr. Anthony Fauci's diary entries from the pandemic. The entries are from hundreds of pages, and they appear to contradict what Fauci publicly said, as you just heard about lockdowns. On March 15, 2020, Fauci wrote in his diary in part, quote, I spoke with Bill de Blasio, mayor of New York City, and convinced him, based on what I was saying publicly in my conversation tonight, to close the NYC schools. I went on to tell him he should close the bars and restaurants in New York City, end quote. Fauci then writes how he had a similar call with California Governor Gavin Newsom's chief of staff about shutting down. The chief of staff told Fauci, based off his opinion, California would close schools, bars, and restaurants. There were other notable entries. On April 27th of 2020, in the height of the pandemic, Fauci wrote in his diary, quote, press still hot and heavy about me, multiple stories per day, directly or indirectly involving me, end quote. That's not all. A month later, on May 21st, 2020, Fauci wrote, quote, big front page article about me appeared in the Washington Post, very flattering. The situation with my national and international fame is explosive and really unimaginable. It's not hyperbole to say that today I am the most famous and talked about person in the country and one of the most recognizable persons in the world, end quote. And another entry from April 4th of 2020, Fauci wrote, quote, Hope Hicks and I convinced him, meaning President Trump, to essentially put Easter on hold for this year, end quote. As of now, Fauci has not commented on the release of his diary entries. This bombshell release comes days ahead of his Senate testimony, which is Wednesday. He will be quizzed on his handling of the COVID pandemic. That testimony will be held before the Senate Homeland Security Committee, which is chaired by Senator Rand Paul. Former member of the White House COVID Task Force and former U.S. Assistant Secretary for Health, Admiral Brett Giroir, joins me. Good afternoon, sir. And I don't know how they got his diary. I don't know whether this is part of a public document or not, or what it is, but I guess we'll find out on Wednesday. I don't know whether this is personal or whatever it was, but tell me your thoughts on what's likely to unfold on Wednesday.
Well, I'm sure Senator Paul has waited a long time for this, but looking at his diary, I wish I could say I was shocked. I'm not at what I'm seeing, because we always knew that he was concerned about his own, fame. But I guess I am a little shocked that while all of us are trying to fight the pandemic and people are dying, he's concerned about himself being the most important and the most recognizable person in the world. I also found it very revealing that while we're trying to get public health messages across on Sunday media and media on all nights, he's preparing reporters to give us gotcha questions so that we could look relatively bad compared to him. It really is amazing to me that all this is out. But I think Senator Paul, aside from the very embarrassing, unabashed egotistical theme throughout this diary, the core issues about where did COVID come from, his role in closing down schools, was there a cover-up about gain-of-function research? I think all of this is going to come out, and that really is much more important than his egotistical character.
Well, I went back through my emails, and I found one email. I emailed him once asking him how long someone should take Paxlovid for having COVID. And so, I relied on his advice because he was holding himself out. I'm not saying the advice was bad, but, when you sort of juxtapose it next to these diary entries, I don't even know how it is that these personal diary entries end up in the public domain, but whatever. And then you've got the gain of function, and I don't know why in the world of this gain of function, which is so profoundly dangerous, and if it's so necessary, why we're doing it in China with someone who doesn't even like us particularly well, instead of doing it here in the United States if it's a national security matter. I don't get any of this.
Well, you shouldn't get any of it because it's really hard to follow. First of all, it's very arguable whether the kinds of gain of function research that's being supported has helped anyone. There's been no new vaccines based on it. There's been no new therapeutics, but we know it's a very, very high risk. Secondly, of course, if you're going to do this, this needs to be done at the best facilities within the United States or maybe the UK and Australia, but certainly not in a BSL-4 facility that is co-run by the People's Republic Army, that is shut off to external examination, and for whom it's well known that they were lax in their BSL-4 priorities, and that many of these experiments were done at a BSL-2 level when they should have been at BSL-4. So even if you believe that gain-of-function research is important, and there is a scientific argument there, let me just say this is not cut and dry. Of course, you would never do it in a facility like Wuhan.
Well, I guess we'll find out Wednesday, but it certainly is going to be, to put it lightly, a very interesting hearing to see what happens. Admiral Brett Giroir, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Meanwhile, here's a stunner. Guess what China is doing? It is luring America's top scientists. The New York Post reports that at least 100 of America's best scientists are already working in China. Senior correspondent John Huddy joins me. John?
Yeah, well, Greta, China's been doing this actually for a while, going back to even 2008 with its 1,000 Talents plan and other programs that U.S. officials have raised concerns about. And one example of China's pursuit of basically cultivating, creating, and also recruiting the best scientists in the world was even highlighted last week when, for the first time, 2 Chinese nationals won the prestigious Fields Medal for mathematics. Both Wang Hong and Deng Yu studied at Peking University in Beijing and are now professors in the United States, Wang at New York University and Deng Yu at the University of Chicago. As one of their colleagues in China said just recently, I think about a week ago, we hope they come back. Well, it's very possible, Greta, they will, because as mentioned, The New York Post reporting that at least 105 top U.S. scientists have left the country to live and work in China. And while many of those listed by the Post appear to have really a Chinese background and, they were raised in China but came to the United States, others, like Harvard professor Charles Lieber, left the U.S. for large salaries. He was paid about $1 million and also millions of dollars in Chinese government funding. Well, he was tied to Wuhan University and also China's so-called 1,000 Talents Plan. As I've previously reported, including right here on this show with you, Greta, it's a program where China recruits top U.S. scientists and often sends some of their brightest young scientists and researchers to the United States to study at top universities and work in top research labs here, including Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, only to return to China years later, taking the knowledge, the training, the expertise learned here in the U.S. to work for the Chinese government and or the Chinese military, or sometimes both. In fact, at least 162 Los Alamos scientists, as we've reported, including those involved in weapons programs, have returned to China or left the U.S. to work in China. Now, many U.S. officials have sounded the alarm about this as being a potential national security threat, and that concern continues today. Scientists who have most recently left the U.S. for China include those involved in AI, bioengineering, and chemistry, including Nobel Prize-winning chemist Omar Yaghi, who grew up in Amman, Jordan, in a Palestinian family, and has now joined China's Tsinghua University in Beijing to lead a new AI-driven research center there. Greta?
John Huddy, thank you. Coming up, first he admits he did it, killing 4 college students. He gets 4 life sentences, and now a bizarre twist. He wants a redo? That when the record continues.
Newsmax.
Shoots it straight. No talking down to me.
Don't tell me how to think.
Don't tell me how to think. Don't tell me how to think.
I trust Newsmax. Newsmax.
They don't tell me how to think. They let me decide.
Real news for real people.
This is the story of the one who knows half-baked preparation leads to downtime that could bring the whole workday to a standstill. That's why she relies on Grainger. With professional-grade products and next-day delivery, Grainger helps ensure her team, and a whole lot of donuts, make every day a little sweeter. Call, click Grainger.com, or just stop by. Grainger, for the ones who get it done.
Most people call leaf filter when their gutters are clogged and they notice one of the many issues that can bring. You can get ahead of costly damage by protecting your home's gutters today.
Schedule your free inspection today. Call 833-LEAF-FILTER or visit leaffilter.com.
The next thing that I heard was you have to have surgery immediately or you have 4 months to live.
Our world changed that day.
Every 15 seconds in America, someone like Jay hears the words, "You have cancer." But your monthly gift helps fund the cancer research that saves people's lives. Donate today, and we'll send you this free t-shirt. Cancer won't wait, and neither can we. Donate today.
You can't find a ranch style with a view.
And a mom-in-law suite.
More realtor agents recommend Realtor.com. With their expert new search tool, just search it like you'd say it.
Room for mom.
And Reba. Make it real with Realtor.com.
Running HR through 15 different apps meant stress for everyone. But with Bamboo HR, everyone's on the ball. And that ball isn't me.
When your business needs an HR platform that's truly all-in-one, that's Bambooable. That's Bamboo HR.
I'm Elmer Heinrich, at 92 years of age with my wife Shirley, who is 83. Now, both of us are still cutting a wide swath in life, all because of Immuno 150. Now, we are asking you to use Immuno 150 like we do. Give it a chance for at least 90 days so that you can see what 70 plant minerals and 80 additional nutrients can do for you.
It really is incredible.
Don't place your order until after you've watched the 3 videos on our website.
Now, tirzepatide for weight management is available in a dissolvable tablet. It's not the injection and doesn't offer the same strength or clinical evidence as the injectable form, and results will differ from the injection. But for patients who don't want shots, this tablet option is worth exploring. Understanding results will differ from the injection. Tirzepatide tablets are a prescription that starts with a telehealth evaluation by a licensed physician who reviews your health history. And if it's right for you, they prescribe it. This might be worth a conversation.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rove Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Connect with a provider at rove.co/sparks.
Stop, check this out. Our most advanced performance frame, Talon, is out. It's a bestseller. We just got it back in stock, and I want to show you a little bit about it. These come with our signature lost and broken protection, and you can try them risk-free for 30 days. Check them out at shadyrays.com.
The heartbreak for the Guthrie family continues, and now a new plea from Today Show host Savannah Guthrie. Her mother, Nancy, was last seen January 31st.
I'm coming on today with a very specific message. It has been months since our mom was taken from us. Our family is in agony. We are in a nightmare that will not end. Nothing about our situation has changed. We have done our part, and we will never stop looking for her. We will always ache for her and feel that hole in our hearts. The world can be a cruel and unforgiving place, and I know that you have tried to do things the right way. So I'm asking you, begging you, to do the right thing now. Make the right choice. Help us find her. Tell us where to look for her. I truly believe it is never too late to do the right thing. Help us bring this situation to an end. For all of us, no matter where we've been and what we've done, I believe there is always a way home. Please make the right choice.
This post marks Savannah's first major public appeal about her mother since June 23rd. Meanwhile, Brian Kohlberger, the man who pleaded guilty for brutally murdering 4 University of Iowa students in the middle of the night in their group home, now wants to take back his guilty plea. In a news interview, Kohlberger said he has filed a petition to challenge his conviction and hopes to get a trial. He claims he was misled into confessing to the killings. After pleading guilty last year, he was sentenced to 4 consecutive life sentences. Former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of Alabama, Jay Town, joins me. And Jay, I put his chances of getting a trial after a plea at 0.
Less than 0, Greta. You're 100% right. Look, he sat in court, listened to the grand jury indictment be read to him, read all the motions that were filed, listened to the preliminary hearing evidence, had the families of the victims get up and call him a monster for taking away their loved ones, and then decided to get up under oath and tell the court and everybody in it that he did it and accept a life without parole plea, 4 life sentences without parole. And now, a year later, this is nothing new. This isn't a bombshell. This is what people who are never going to breathe fresh air again, they're going to die in prison either by the death penalty or, in this case, just natural causes. But he's never getting out. So they file these motions to get their sociopathic relevancy back up, and in the hopes that maybe they will get out someday. But his chances, like you said, Greta, 0.
Yeah, and I should add that when a judge takes a plea, the judge makes sure the person understands the charge against him. It's done of their free will, understands all the rights they're giving up by not having a trial, right to confront witnesses, understands everything. It's all in the record. The person says, yes, I understand. So now for him to say that he was misled will fall on deaf ears. All right.
And he also has to say he's happy with his counsel. I'm sorry, Greta, but he also has to say, are you happy and satisfied with the defense counsel that you've been provided? And he said yes. So a lot of this motion is just, like you said, 0 chance. Sorry.
Turn to Savannah Guthrie. That was a to whoever took her mother. That was not just a post about her mother. She's begging for help.
Yeah, I don't blame the Guthrie family for never ceasing to stop trying to get their mom back. I don't believe that the killers would ever point them in a direction, because I guarantee there's some forensic evidence, hair fibers, DNA, whatever, of the killers that would lead authorities to their front door. And that's all they were ever concerned about. So I don't know how successful this will be, But it is heartbreaking to see. It really is. And I can't even imagine the nightmare that she is describing for herself. I can't even imagine it, but it's going to be tough to get them to respond, I think.
And there's so many other Americans know exactly how she feels who have had similar but just not high-profile cases where their loved ones disappear. But I think that the only way this thing gets solved at this point, where we're 6 months out, is if someone says something. And that's usually what happens, like someone's in a bar and says, yeah, my friend, you should hear what my friend did, or something like that. That is the only, at this point, because the physical evidence is gone. It's over, that part. And so the only thing is if someone talks. And I think that's probably why she puts that out there. Savannah's a lawyer. She knows how these things work.
Yeah, or if a defendant gets jammed up in some other charges, some other case, and offers this information to save themselves, that's another way that this information could come to light. So, but that takes so much time. It's so uncertain, and it just prolongs that nightmare that the Guthrie family's going through.
Yeah, and the person doesn't act alone. I mean, the person got gasoline someplace to gas his car. He was, he probably works, or I think it's a man, works or has friends or has family. Someone knows something odd.
Yeah, there's probably a lot of people that know something, and as long as they're not dead, also, then the chances of criminals like this getting caught and being able to use this as a bargaining chip increase. But it takes time, and I hate that for the family.
Well, and it's painful in the meantime. Jay Town, thank you very much.
Thanks, Greta.
Coming up, why a group of people want to keep New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani from attending the 9/11 ceremony in September. That when the record continues.
Attention! Do you owe money to the IRS? If you owe $10,000 or more, you must hear this message, because new Trump-era tax policy changes are providing relief to the American taxpayer. IRS policy changes in 2025 and 2026 have created new ways to resolve debt. Tax Relief Helpers knows exactly how to navigate them and could help you save thousands. Just call 800-357-9528 to protect your assets, home, and retirement.
I owed $87,000 in taxes. Tax Relief Helpers got the amount I owed down to just $3,500. I saved $83,500.
I got behind on my taxes and I owed $48,000. I called, and after they told me about the changes at the IRS, they got my bill fully removed.
We save Americans millions of dollars in tax debt every year, and we can help you. Call right now to take advantage of the latest Trump-era tax deductions to protect your assets, home, and retirement from the IRS. The call and consult are absolutely free. Call 800-357-9528. That's 800-357-9528. Attention! Do you owe money to the IRS? If you owe $10,000 or more, you must hear this message, because new Trump-era tax policy changes are providing relief to the American taxpayer. IRS policy changes in 2025 and 2026 have created new ways to resolve debt. Tax Relief Helpers knows exactly how to navigate them and could help you save thousands. Just call 800-357-9528 to protect your assets, home, and retirement.
I owed $87,000 in taxes. Tax Relief Helpers got the amount I owed down to just $3,500. I saved $83,500.
I got behind on my taxes and I owed $48,000. I called, and after they told me about the changes at the IRS, they got my bill fully removed.
We save Americans millions of dollars in tax debt every year, and we can help you. Call right now to take advantage of the latest Trump-era tax deductions to protect your assets, home, and retirement from the IRS. The call and consult are absolutely free. Call 800-357-9528. That's 800-357-9528.
Get in, loser. We're going shopping.
Lying on the grass, a Sunday morning of mass.
Yummy.
Indulging in myself.
As if.
Fantastic. That's what I've been saying. I got sand in my butt. I can't hardly walk.
You feel my sunshine.
It's fun for me to win on the course, but it's even more fun to win on Deal Dash.
Lori won $2,000 Tiffany earrings for just $1, and Joseph won an iPad for just $6. There's millions of fast auctions, so try today at DealDash.com for $50 of free credit and your first win guaranteed.
Things at work don't always work. But with Easy Cater, the food always does. Big room booked again? Easy Cater always has options. Learn more at easycater.com.
Some families of 9/11 victims want to ban New York City Mayor Zohran Mamdani from attending the 25th anniversary ceremony in September. Giovanni Galante, whose wife died in the 9/11 attack, has started an online petition. He wants to keep the mayor from the commemoration. He says, quote, "Our objection is based on his public record, his failure to meaningfully acknowledge the horror of that day, and his employment of support for or association with individuals who have minimized 9/11, defended terrorists, or even suggested America deserved the attacks," end quote. So far, the online petition has generated more than 15,000 signatures, with at least 300 coming from victims' families. Mamdani has responded to the petition.
I will proudly honor the families, the survivors, the first responders forever impacted by that horrific terror attack by standing alongside them at this year's 9/11 commemoration, reaffirming that we will never forget the solemn day felt by all of us who call this city home and, frankly, by all of us who call this country home.
Meanwhile, today Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is arriving in Washington. He will meet with President Trump, and the two leaders will discuss Iran and the security and future of Israel. The Prime Minister will also attend a ceremony for the late Senator Lindsey Graham. Now to... Yes, midterm, and that's our midterm alert. Maine Democrats have picked their new candidate to run for U.S. Senate. Their choice will face five-term incumbent Senator Susan Collins in November. This choice came after their last candidate, Graham Plattner, dropped out after a sexual assault allegation. So who is taking Plattner's place on the ticket? He is Troy Jackson. Jackson is a former Maine State Senate president. Jackson also ran for governor of Maine, but failed to get the Democratic nomination. What is Jackson's platform? Well, it's progressive.
I feel very strongly that abortion is health care, and that is something that I'm going to fight for every day of the week.
We can fix what's broken in Washington. We can pass Medicare for all. We can take on corporate power and the politicians in their pocket.
ICE is not law enforcement. It's a rogue agency that goes around doing things that they're being told to on high. They need to be dismantled because they give us nothing in this country but heartache and racism.
Jackson is also against sending aid to Israel. He wrote on X in part, quote, "When I'm in the U.S. Senate, I will never vote in favor of U.S. taxpayer-funded military aid to Israel," end quote. Over the weekend, President Trump called Troy Jackson another lunatic. Yesterday, Louisiana Senator John Kennedy also shared his thoughts about Maine and the Democratic Party.
The Graham Plattner wing of the party his party's not going to let Schumer agree with us. They already want to give Schumer a bathrobe, a popsicle, and an early bedtime and have him retire. I don't think Chuck can agree with us. I think he's going to shut down government.
Coming up, a brilliant 7-year-old boy comes up with a new global hit. You're going to hear it. That when the record continues.
Hey, I'm Carl Higby from Newsmax. Look, I'm unapologetically pro-American, and honestly, this is the one place that lets me call it how it is. I'm not holding back. I'll give it to you straight every single night.
Another lost summer scrolling and swiping? Another lost spring break? Turns out, the fix is right here. Create new lifetime memories from the comfort of your backyard. No passports, no reservations. Latham's premium handcrafted pools are ultra durable for any climate. Can be installed in weeks, not months. And have hundreds of designs, sizes, and colors to choose from. For 70 years, Latham Pool has remained the gold standard in bringing backyard dreams to life. Our pools are easy to care for, won't stain or crack, and never require costly resurfacing. And with flexible financing options, your dream is within reach. And with our crystal finish, you can bring your favorite exotic watercolor and shimmer right to your own backyard. It's never too early to start planning for a lifetime of memories. Visit LathamPool.com now. Latham is a proud sponsor of USA Artistic Swimming.
It's 2 a.m., your fever spiked and you're miserable. Here's your options.
Urgent care, closed. ER, slammed. And you'll spend hundreds of thousands in both. Telehealth, yeah, but the pharmacies are closed.
That's the reason why we keep emergency medical kits at home.
It has doctor-prescribed medication like generic Z-Pak, amoxicillin, other antibiotics and antivirals. You can treat flu, pneumonia, strep, sinus infections, UTIs, and more.
Because if you're sick in at night, traveling or stranded, you don't want options.
You want what is inside this kit. No waiting, no pharmacy, and no copays.
Just schedule a quick telehealth call.
And that's how you feel better faster and avoid serious complications.
Every family should have this kit, and here's how to order yours.
Order online in minutes and use the promo code to save $45. Your doctor-prescribed kit ships fast to your door, packed with medications to treat over 30 conditions. So when something hits, you're ready. And a wellness company telehealth doctor is always there if you need guidance.
For years, Debbie always hid her smile. It had just become habit. The covering hand, the moment stifled. But with her new teeth from affordable dentures and implants, Debbie now beams with the power of 1,000 suns. Not a hovering hand in sight. Shine on, Debbie. Shine on. Affordable dentures and implants. That's what we do.
Hey guys, Viagra is not your only option. Rose Sparks act fast and stay active longer. They aren't pills. Sparks dissolve under your tongue to reach your bloodstream for speedy results. Sildenafil starts things off strong, and Tadalafil stays in your system for longer. More confidence, more control. Rose Sparks. Connect with a provider at ro.co/sparks.
Hey, I'm Dr. Drew. Our cells oxidize, and fatty 15 reduces that risk. C15 is the longevity nutrient. I take this nutrient, my family takes the nutrients, you should too. Fatty 15 has benefits that people actually see and feel.
At Omaha Steaks, we take premium aged steak and turn it into pure ground burgers like this. Our Burger Perfection flight comes with 20 big, juicy burgers, all for just $79.99 at omahasteaks.com/TV. Burger Perfection guaranteed.
Have you ever seen this bird? I confess, I had not. It's an eastern rosella. They're native to southeastern Australia, and now they are very popular because of a new hit song by a 7-year-old.
They're flying over my head now. Tell you what this species is. Hey, eastern rosellas, eastern rosellas. Look at the beautiful colors. Eastern rosellas, eastern rosellas.
7-year-old Miles Phillips wrote and performed that hit. He did have some help from his father. And right now that song has more than 1 million views on social media. It's also been played on the radio. Miles said he wrote the song after seeing the birds on a family vacation. He was inspired by the birds' bright colors and how friendly they were. Miles said he's already working on a second song and putting together a band. And don't forget, I have a podcast called Greta Wire. You'll like it. It's free. It's different. You can subscribe right now on your favorite podcast app, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or at newsmax.com/listen, YouTube, you name it. Thank you for watching. Ed Henry, The Big Take, is next. Stay with Newsmax.